This canto has the long title, Nirvana and the Discovery of the All-Negating Absolute. But we haven't come to that theme yet. These first 2 pages have been telling us about the effect on Savitri, around Savitri, of the wonderful psychic realization and transformation which she experienced in the previous canto, the finding of the soul. So for her personally, this has the effect that she has a new kind of inner sight. And when she looks at Shraddhavan with that inner sight, she doesn't see any dark cloud around him. She sees something like a glorious sun, which signifies he says, the cyclic rondure of a sovereign life, the completion of a full cycle of a human life. Rondure, it's a round circle, it's fully round. So she doesn't see him carried away from her into distant heavens. She doesn't see him lying in the cave of death. She feels that in her inner vision, he was always with her, meeting her eyes with his responsive eyes. And he's there not as a spirit, but as a living body, near to her body's joy. I'll continue reading from there. But now, no longer in these great wild woods, in kinship with the days of bird and beast, and levelled to the bareness of earth's brown breast, but mid the thinking, high-built lives of men, in tapestried chambers and on crystal floors, in armoured town or gardened pleasure walks, even in distance, closer than her thoughts, body to body near, soul near to soul, moving as if by a common breath and will they were tied in the single circling of their days, together by love's unseen atmosphere, inseparable like the earth and sky. Thus, for a while, she trod the golden path. This was the sun before abysmal night. Once, as she sat in deep felicitous muse, still quivering from her lover's strong embrace, and made her joy a bridge twixt earth and heaven, an abyss yawned suddenly beneath her heart. A vast and nameless fear dragged at her nerves, as drags a wild beast its half-slaughtered prey. It seemed to have no den from which it sprang. It was not hers, but hid its unseen cause. Then rushing came its vast and fearful fount, a formless dread with shapeless, endless wings, filling the universe with its dangerous breath, a denser darkness than the night could bear, enveloped the heavens and possessed the earth. A rolling surge of silent death it came, curving round the far edge of the quaking globe, effacing heaven with its enormous stride. It willed to expunge the choked and anguished air and end the fable of the joy of life. It seemed her very being to forbid, abolishing all by which her nature lived, and labored to blot out her body and soul. A clutch of some half-seen invisible, an ocean of terror and of sovereign might, a person and a black infinity. It seemed to cry to her without thought or word the message of its dark eternity and the awful meaning of its silences. Out of some sullen, monstrous vast arisen, out of an abysmal deep of grief and fear, imagined by some blind, regardless self, a consciousness of being without its joy, empty of thought, incapable of bliss, that felt life blank and nowhere found a soul. A voice to the dumb anguish of the heart conveyed a stark sense of unspoken words. In her own depths, she heard the unuttered thought that made unreal the world and all life meant. We're going this way? This way, yeah? You'll start, Anna.
But now, no longer in these great wild woods, in kinship with the days of bird and beast, and leveled to the bareness of earth's brown breast, but meet the thinking, high-built lives of men, in tapestried chambers and on crystal floors, in armored town or gardened pleasure walks, even in distance closer than her thoughts, body to body near, soul near to soul, moving as if by a common breath and will. They were tied in the single circling of their days, together by love's unseen atmosphere, inseparable like the earth and sky.
Yes. So this is the way that now Savitri was experiencing Shraddhavan in her inner sight and feeling. She feels that he's always with her, a living soul, and meeting her eyes. He's looking at her with love. He's a living body near to the joy of her body. But now she doesn't see him in these woods where they have met, not in these great wild woods. She doesn't see him living the way he is doing now, in kinship, in closeness, in close relation with the birds and the animals. And his life, his human life, Sri Aurobindo says, was leveled. It's cut down and leveled to the bareness of earth's brown breast, living in a very, very simple and primitive way, very close to the earth. No? She doesn't see him like that in her inner sight. Instead, she sees him moving amid the thinking, high-built lives of men, highly developed human lives, no? And not the lives of just ordinary people, but of quite aristocratic people, living in chambers, wonderful rooms with woven pictures, tapestries hung on the walls, no? And the floors, beautiful shining floors made of crystal stone. And she sees him in different ways, sometimes in the town, the fortified town, a town that is defended against enemies with walls and guards, an armored town, or like she had in her father's palace, these gardened pleasure walks. And as she looks into the future and sees what is destined for them, she feels that even if they are separated, if they have to be physically separated for some time, even then she feels his presence closer to her than her thoughts, because inwardly they are close to each other. Even if they are separated physically by distance, there's a feeling of the closeness of his body to hers and their souls close together. And she feels them as if they would be moving, he says, by a common breath and will, a shared breath, a shared life, and a shared will, that they want the same things. So it's as if they are tied together in their life energies, tied by love's unseen atmosphere, connecting them. So their lives, even if perhaps physically they're separated, it's a single circling that's going on. They are always connected. It's as if they will be inseparable, just as we cannot possibly separate the earth from the sky. They are connected.
This is not a psychic love. This is as if the author's not conjugal love.
Yes, I would say this is a kind of integral love. It is the love that Mother has written about. You know her text on marriage? No? Yeah? So she says, of course, the essence of human marriage is connecting your physical existence But she says that's not enough. You have to have that inner oneness, shared pleasures and interests and enjoyments. And then if you share also your highest ideas and ideals, all that is very good. But if you share that soul nearness, that's the best thing. And I think that's what's described here. Suresh, you like to read these 2 lines?
Thus, for a while, she trod the golden path. This was the sun before abysmal night.
Yes. So what has been described so far in this 64 lines, this is the happy time, you know? Because of this psychic experience that she's had. She's able to tread, to walk on the golden path, the sunlit path, the happy path in the sunlight of the divine. But then Sri Aurobindo says, this was the sun before abysmal night. She's going to have to pass through a tremendous darkness. Abysmal. The abysm is connected with the word abyss, which is the deepest part of the sea, where there's no light at all. No. Something that is abysmal, it's deep and dark and often terrifying. So the next page tells how that darkness comes to her. Yes. You'll read, Bhavan?
Once, as she sat in deep felicitous muse, still quivered from her lover's warm embrace, and made her joy of switch twixt earth and heaven, and in this joy suddenly beneath her heart.
Yes. So there she is in all her happiness. She's still feeling Satyavan's strong embrace, and she's there sitting felicitous. Felicity is happiness, full of happiness, and she's withdrawn within, she's musing, but she's consciously making her joy a bridge, a connection between earth and heaven. And this is the characteristic of the psychic experience, that one can feel the soul in everything earthly. So she's making this bridge. And then suddenly this abyss, this deep darkness opens up suddenly beneath her heart. It's the heart that's carrying the love and the happiness. And it's as if everything suddenly gives way, and there's this deep, black, threatening hole underneath her heart. I don't know whether you ever had that feeling that there's no support left for the heart.
Here, the yawn is actually yawning, and that means
Opening up.
Yeah.
Yes, like a mouth opening up in a yawn. Yeah. We speak about a yawning gap. Suddenly a hole opens up. You read, yes?
A vast and nameless fear dragged at her nerves, as dogs a wild risk its heart
Slaughtered.
prey. It seemed to have no den from which it sprang. It was not hers, but its unsent curse.
Cause. Hmm? So the first thing that comes is this fear. Vast fear, all-enveloping fear, which doesn't seem to have a name. But it's dragging at the nerves physically, it's dragging at her. And Sri Aurobindo says it's like we have seen films perhaps of wild animals, lions or cheetahs. They kill their prey, and before the prey is really dead, they want to carry it away to a safe place. So that fear, it's as if it's dragging her away. She's not yet dead, she's aware of that dragging. But that fear, she can't see where it has come from. The den is the place where the animal lives. But she can't see what is the home of that fear. Where has it come from? It doesn't seem to have sprung out of a den. She can't feel that. But she feels that it is not her own. But she can't, it's hiding whatever it is that has caused this fear, or the origin or source of this fear is hidden from her. Patricia.
Then rushing came its vast and fearful fount, a formless dread, with shapeless, endless wings, filling the universe with its dangerous breath. A denser darkness than the night could bear, enveloped the heavens and possessed the earth.
So first comes the fear, and then comes the source of the fear, a fount. It's like a fountain, it's where the water comes from. Here, this is the source of the fear. It's also vast, fearful. And that comes almost like an approaching storm. But this is an inner storm. It comes in the shape, or without a shape. It's formless. What is this fear, this dread, this feeling that something terrible is happening or about to happen? It seems to have wings, but these wings are shapeless, endless. They are not delimited. It fills the whole universe with its dangerous breath. And it's a much denser darkness than the night. The night can be a dark night, can be very dark. But this is not just the atmosphere is dark, there's something thicker and darker about it. No? And this thick, dense darkness envelops, covers up the whole sky and takes possession of the whole earth. It doesn't allow anything else to exist. It's just this darkness occupying everything. Alice?
A rolling surge of silent death. It came curving round the far edge of the quaking globe. It facing heaven with its enormous stride. It willed to expunge the choked and anguished air and end the fable of the joy of life.
This is seeing the earth from a little way out in space, so that one can see the curve of the earth. Nowadays we can get pictures like this, where we can see the sunrise coming or the night coming around the curve of the earth. But for that you have to be out in space a bit. No? There are places in the poem where Sri Aurobindo takes us out into space so that we can see the earth from a distance. So this is one of them. In her inner sight, she sees it like that, like a huge dark storm cloud coming, rolling like a wave, a rolling surge. It's like a tsunami coming, but it's silent. That makes it even more terrifying somehow. No? It comes curving round the far edge of the quaking globe, as if the whole earth is shaking because of the fear of this darkness. And it seems to efface, to wipe out heaven. Sometimes we use this word heaven just to mean the sky. No? But here definitely when it says effacing heaven, it's wiping out all the higher levels of consciousness. No? It's striding, coming quickly. And there's a will in this darkness. This darkness wants to destroy, to expunge, to abolish, to wipe out the air. It's as if the earth air, the air that we breathe, that keeps us alive, is full of suffering, of anguish. And it's choked, it can't breathe because, we can't breathe, Savitri can't breathe because of the denseness of that darkness, of that fear. And what it wants to do is to end all joy of life. It wants to make sure that everybody and everything understands that this joy of life that keeps us all alive is just a fable, a myth. It's not real. Only this darkness is real. Mila.
It seems her very being should forbid, abolishing all by which her nature breathed, and labor to blot out her body and soul. A clutch of some half seen invisible, an ocean of terror and of sovereign might, a person and a black infinity.
Yes. To forbid, it's to say something shall not happen. So it's as if this darkness is telling her, you cannot go on existing. It seems to wipe out, destroy everything by which her nature lived, all the natural being which is ours here in the material world. All that seems to be destroyed. It's trying to blot out her body and soul. A great darkness coming to say, you don't exist, you are not there. Nowadays we don't use pens that you dip into ink. But when I was a child in school, we had to learn to use those kind of pens. And they make blots. You've written your word nicely, or you've done your nice drawing, and suddenly it gets blotted out. There's a great big drop of black ink which comes and spoils it. So that's where this word comes from. And then you have blotting paper, which you use to soak up the ink so that the blot shouldn't spread. But That's what the idea is here. This black something is coming and wiping everything out. Trying to wipe out everything, her body and her soul. And it gets hold of her. Clutch is something that holds tight. This is something invisible, and yet at the same time she half sees it. It's an ocean, a vast ocean, a vast sea, full of terror, of extreme fear. And at the same time, it's absolutely powerful. Nothing can resist it. Sovereign might. The sovereign is the ruler, decides things. It's a black infinity without limits, but at the same time, it's a person, it's a being who has a will and who is determined to destroy not only Savitri herself, but all life, all earth, all heaven, everything. Have you found the place, Deepak?
Yes.
Yes, good. Okay.
Thank you.
Sergei, you'll read, please.
It seemed to cry to her without thought or word the message of its dark eternity and the awful meaning of its silences. Out of some sullen monstrous vast arisen, out of an abysmal deep of grief and fear, imagined by some blind, regardless self, the consciousness of being without a joy, empty of thought, incapable of bliss, that held like black, and nowhere found a soul, a voice to the dumb anguish of the heart, conveyed a stark sense of unspoken words. In her own depths she felt the unuttered thought that made unreal the world and all life live.
Yes. So this darkness, this black infinity, this will to destroy, seems to be calling out to her loudly. But there's no thought and there's no word, but this message is coming. The message of its dark eternity. This is something without limits. The awful meaning of its silences. There's no word, there's no thought, there's no sound. There's just nothing. And this seems to have come out, seems to have emerged from some sullen, monstrous vast. Something that's monstrous is terrible. It's also very large. So this is a vast darkness, and it is sullen. A person who is sullen refuses to be happy. Whatever you do to cheer them up, they go on being miserable. So it's something like that. It's insisting on suffering. It also seems to come out of, again, this abysm, this deep, dark place, full of grief and fear. And such a deep, dark place can only be imagined by a self, by a being who is blind, who has no power of sight. Here Sri Aurobindo uses the word regardless in a different sense from the one that we use in our ordinary speech. We say regardless means that somebody goes ahead, he doesn't care. No? He doesn't give any regard. But Throughout the poem, Sri Aurobindo uses the word regard in its French sense of a regard, a look. But this is blind, it has no way of looking. So that's also why it doesn't care or pay any attention to anything else, because it can only see itself. It's a consciousness of being. This is something impossible, but anyway, that's what he's describing. This consciousness of existing, but without any of the joy or delight of existence. Satchitananda, there's always the three things together. There's the existence, and the consciousness, and the bliss. They're inseparable. But this is some deep contradiction. It's existence with consciousness, but without bliss. So it experiences all life as a blank emptiness. There's no soul anywhere in that. So what is emerging and coming out of all this, what is imagined, there's a voice which speaks to the dumb anguish of the heart's suffering. And it conveys, it somehow communicates the meaning, the terrible, painful meaning of unspoken words. It's not put into formulated words. And Savitri feels in her own depths that thought which is unuttered. It's not spoken. To utter means to speak. And this thought and these words, the sense of what this, what is not being said, is being communicated, it makes the whole world and everything that life means, it makes it unreal, without any reality or significance. Perhaps people who get possessed by a deep depression, they might experience something like this. And it's very difficult to get out of. Joel, you will read? Joel?
Who art thou who claimst thy crown of separate birth, the illusion of thy soul's reality and personal Godhead on an ignorant globe, in the animal body of imperfect man?
This is the first thing. He challenges Savitri's right to exist. Who are you, who are claiming this achievement, this crown of separate birth, that you can have a separate existence? You think you are living the illusion that you exist, that you are real, that at least your soul is real. No? And you think, now you've had this experience, you think that there can be something like personal expression of the divine, personal Godhead on this ignorant globe, this earth which is the place of no knowledge. And you who are living here in an animal body, the animal body of an imperfect human being. How can you think that you have a separate reality, that your soul exists, has a right to exist? It's impossible. That's an illusion.
Hope not to be happy in a world of pain, and dream not, listening to the unspoken word, and dazzled by the inexpressible ray, transcending the mute, superconscious real, to give a body to the unknowable, or for a sanction to thy heart's delight, to burden with bliss the silence still supreme, profaning its bare and formless sanctity, or call into thy chamber the divine, and sit with God, tasting the human joy.
So he's mocking her state of happiness and her state of realization. He says, don't think that you can be happy in this world of pain. And don't fill yourself with the dream, the illusion that it's possible for the unknowable, the supreme reality, to inhabit a body, a form. Don't look for a high sanction, somebody, the divine saying yes to the delight of your heart, and think that the still supreme, the unmoving, silent supreme, that you can burden him with bliss, when in fact the supreme is to do that, to think that he can be blissful, or that there can be any relation between the supreme and you. This is to profane. If you make something sacred, if you spoil it or make it ordinary, that's profaning it. It says the supreme is beyond all your bliss and your dreams and all that. It is bare, it is formless, it is sacred, it has nothing to do with you and your feelings. And don't think that you can call the divine into your chamber, into your private space, and sit tasting a human joy and sharing the divine presence at the same time. That's out of the question. He says you've just been dreaming to listen to that high voice, that unspoken word from above. And you've been dazzled by this light, this ray which can't be expressed. And you think you've gone beyond the realm of the silent, superconscient. It's all an illusion. Don't think that you are going to be able to incarnate all that here in a body and make yourself a bridge between earth and heaven. That's nonsense.
You've taken the 110 lines to this human joy first portion and then taking the other, going back, no?
Yes, we went back, yes. Because this way, I mean, it's, if I'd...
It's connection. This is connection.
Yes, if I'd spoken first about this unspoken word and inexpressible ray, transcending and so on, it's don't dream because you're listening to that high word and because you've seen that great light and you feel you've gone beyond even the realm of the superconscious. Don't think, don't dream that you can give a body to that unknowable. No. And don't think, don't dream that you can get a sanction from that supreme, that he will say yes to the delight of your heart. And don't think that this happiness that you are feeling, or that bliss which you imagine that the supreme feels, no, that is all just your illusion. that would be to profane, to speak inappropriately about that sacredness, the bare and formless sacredness. And don't think that you can call the divine presence into your private space and sit with the presence of the divine, tasting a human joy, the joy of being with your beloved husband. This doesn't go together at all. No? Deepak, would you like to read?
I have created all.
Yes.
All I devour. I am death and the dark, terrible mother of life. I am Kali, black, naked in the world. I am Maya, the universe and manifest.
Cheat, my cheat, yes. So now he's saying who he is, this person and this black infinity. And he is claiming to be supreme. No? I have created all. I'm the creator of all this, and I'm the destroyer. I devour it. I eat it all up. I am death. And at the same time, I'm the dark, terrible mother of life. I give birth to everything. I take this form of Kali, black and naked in the world. I take the form of Maya, of illusion. No? And this whole universe is my cheat, my trick I've played on all of you. No? So we begin to see that this is Savitri's first encounter with this power of death that she's going to have to deal with all through the later part of the book. No? Ganga Lakshmi.
I live vast human happiness with my breath, and slay the will to live, to joy to be. That all may pass back into nothing, and only a bit the eternal and the absolute.
Yes. I lay waste human happiness with my breath. It's like a fire, like a dragon breathing out and destroying everything with its breath. Particularly first human happiness. And with my breath, I destroy, I kill the joy to live, the will to live. If you get caught in this dragon's breath, all your will to live gets destroyed. The joy to go on existing gets destroyed. And I do this so that everything can pass back into nothingness. And all that will be left will be what is eternal and absolute. The absolute asat, non-existence. This is the all-negating absolute that comes in the title here. Bhavana.
For only the blank eternal can be true. All else is shadow and flash in mind's bright glare. Mind, hollow mirror in which ignorance sees a splendid figure of its own false self, and dreams it sees a glorious solid world.
Oh, thank you. So he says only the eternal absolute nothingness shall remain, no? Because only this blank eternal can be true. All appearance is illusion. No? Everything else, all this that we experience, is just shadow and flash, contrast of light and darkness, in this mirror of mind, the bright mirror of mind. He says mind is a hollow mirror. That means there's nothing, it's empty. There's nothing in it. No? But the ignorance sees its own reflection in that mind, and it sees a splendid figure. It sees a wonderful reflection of itself, but it's a false self, and dreams that it's seeing a glorious, solid world. There are philosophies that teach this, that what we are seeing has no real existence. We are only perceiving something which is some kind of play of light and darkness in our own mind. Martin.
O soul, inventor of man's thoughts and hopes, thyself the invention of the moment's dream, illusion's center, or subtle apex point, at last know thyself, from vain existence cease.
Yes. He addresses Savitri. He says, "Oh, you think you are a soul, and that you are the source of man's hopes and thoughts, but you yourself are only an invention from the stream of moments, the stream of time, or the center of this illusion, or maybe the subtle apex point, the highest point. But now I am here, I'm showing myself to you. Know what you are, and stop existing." This is what he's telling her. Andreas.
A shadow of the negating absolute. The intolerant darkness traveled surging past, the ebbed in her a formidable voice.
Yes. So this intolerant darkness, Sri Aurobindo says, is a shadow of the absolute, the negating absolute, the absolute that says no. This darkness is intolerant. It doesn't want anything but itself to exist. But it passes her. It travels past her like a big wave, like a huge wave. And it goes past. So that voice, that tremendous voice that she's been not exactly hearing, but understanding, ebbed. This is what the sea does. It comes up to high tide first, and then it ebbs away. So if there's a tsunami wave, it comes, and then it goes away again. So that voice has passed. But it left behind her inner world laid waste. That's what they do, these tsunamis. They destroy everything. A barren silence weighed upon her breast. Nothing can grow there. It's waste, destroyed. Her kingdom of delight was there no more. Only her soul remained, its emptied stage, the stage where her delight had been played out. Everything's been washed away. But her soul is there, and it's waiting. It's wanting to know, it's waiting to know the unknown, eternal will. She's not completely convinced by this voice of absolute darkness. She wants to know what is really the supreme will. So that's where we will stop today.
In line 134, the intolerant darkness, he gives capital D.
Yes, this is a power of darkness. And we read, no, it's a black infinity, but it's also a person. It's an embodiment of darkness, a cosmic, universal spirit of darkness, something very powerful. It's a shadow, the dark side of the Absolute, of the Supreme, the Transcendent. That's what gives it so much power.
Then does it mean that negating absolute means absolute is also negating?
Yes. Yes. Later on we'll come to a place, or maybe we have come to the place. Do you remember when Asvapati met the mother? He had been in touch with the unknowable, even identified with the unknowable. And then he learns that only the eternal no has neared, and it's destroyed all your illusions. But now there's also the eternal yes. What about that? Yes, that was in book 3. Yeah. So Savitri now has had this experience of the eternal no, the all-negating absolute. But now, no longer in these great wild woods, in kinship with the days of bird and beast, and levelled to the bareness of earth's brown breast, but mid the thinking, high-built lives of men, in tapestried chambers, and on crystal floors, in armoured town or gardened pleasure walks, even in distance closer than her thoughts, body to body near, soul near to soul, moving as if by a common breath and will, they were tied in the single circling of their days together by love's unseen atmosphere, inseparable like the earth and sky. Thus, for a while, she trod the golden path. This was the sun before abysmal night. Once, as she sat in deep felicitous muse, still quivering from her lover's strong embrace, and made her joy a bridge twixt earth and heaven, an abyss yawned suddenly beneath her heart. A vast and nameless fear dragged at her nerves, as drags a wild beast its half-slaughtered prey. It seemed to have no den from which it sprang. It was not hers, but hid its unseen cause. Then, rushing, came its vast and fearful fount, a formless dread, with shapeless, endless wings, filling the universe with its dangerous breath. A denser darkness than the night could bear enveloped the heavens and possessed the earth. A rolling surge of silent death it came, curving round the far edge of the quaking globe. Effacing heaven with its enormous stride, it willed to expunge the choked and anguished air and end the fable of the joy of life. It seemed her very being to forbid, abolishing all by which her nature lived, and laboured to blot out her body and soul. A clutch of some half-seen invisible, an ocean of terror and of sovereign might, a person and a black infinity. It seemed to cry to her without thought or word the message of its dark eternity and the awful meaning of its silences. Out of some sullen, monstrous, vast arisen, out of an abysmal deep of grief and fear, imagined by some blind, regardless self, a consciousness of being without its joy, empty of thought, incapable of bliss, that felt life blank and nowhere found a soul. A voice to the dumb anguish of the heart conveyed a stark sense of unspoken words. In her own depths she heard the unuttered thought that made unreal the world and all life meant. Who art thou who claims thy crown of separate birth, the illusion of thy soul's reality, and personal Godhead on an ignorant globe in the animal body of imperfect man? Hope not to be happy in a world of pain, and dream not, listening to the unspoken word and dazzled by the inexpressible ray, transcending the mute superconscious realm, to give a body to the unknowable, or for a sanction to thy heart's delight, to burden with bliss the silent, still, supreme, profaning its bare and formless sanctity, or call into thy chamber the divine, and sit with God, tasting a human joy. I have created all I devour. I am death, and the dark, terrible mother of life. I am Kali, black and naked in the world. I am Maya, and the universe is my cheat. I lay waste human happiness with my breath, and slay the will to live, the joy to be, that all may pass back into nothingness, and only abide the eternal and absolute. For only the blank eternal can be true. All else is shadow and flash in mind's bright glass. Mind, hollow mirror, in which ignorance sees a splendid figure of its own false self, and dreams it sees a glorious solid world. O soul, inventor of man's thoughts and hopes, thyself the invention of the moment's stream, illusion's center or subtle apex point, at last know thyself, from vain existence cease. A shadow of the negating absolute, the intolerant darkness travelled, surging past, and ebbed in her the formidable voice. It left behind her inner world laid waste. A barren silence weighed upon her heart. Her kingdom of delight was there no more. Only her soul remained, its emptied stage, awaiting the unknown eternal will.